What about lying? This is one of the most things people are most interested in is how to, everyone wants to spot a liar. It's funny because like the rest of our conversation, one could infer that as how to like be a liar. I'm joking, I'm not saying. No, but it's like how to show up in a certain way to get success in a certain context, whether it's dating or work or whatever.
Yeah.
But then we want to figure out if someone's playing us. Is it possible to spot a liar?
Most people can only spot a lie with 54% accuracy. They've actually studied the average person is very bad. You're better off tossing a coin. Yeah. 54% accuracy. We are very bad at spotting liars. And this is important to know about yourself, is we should not overestimate our ability to spot lies. We are usually not good at it. So it is very important to give someone the benefit of the doubt because you don't know. It's very hard to spot. It is possible. There are certain statistical cues to deceit. There are cues that over and over again research find liars typically do, but not always. Like there's no Pinocchio's nose. There's no one cue that means someone is lying. But there are a couple cues that come up over and over again. One we already talked about, the question inflection. It's very suspicious if someone is speaking and all of a sudden they ask a question. If they're not actually asking a question, right? Like if all of a sudden you hear the question inflection used on a statement or a number or a boundary or a timeline, that's when I'm like, let's double click on that for a second and talk about that budget. So you mentioned the number was 500,000. Where does that number come from? Let's talk about more. And I want to hear if I'm going to hear it again.
Interesting.
So that's a double click for me. That's like, let's make sure that I heard that right. Let's make sure that you feel confident about it. Where does that come from? So that's just a little red flag that says dive deeper. Nothing is a sign of lying. It's just a sign that you should dig deeper. So question inflection. A volume drop is another vocal cue of deception. So when we're anxious or nervous, we will lose volume and we lose breath. So if you hear someone who's speaking, I hear this a lot in sales calls, so someone will, I always know what part of a sales presentation makes my entrepreneurs the most nervous because they lose volume during that part of their presentation. So it sounds like this. So let's move on to our team. So our founding partners are me, myself, Joe, Jimmy, and we all met at NYU. And we're going to now talk about, like I'm making it obvious for you, but if you're listening for it, you'll hear where someone is like, they literally lost fuel. They literally lost breath. So a sudden drop in volume is a very interesting cue to like double click, like what just happened there? How do you feel about your co-founder? How long have you known each other? Anything we should know about that? How's the relationship? How do you fight? How do you communicate? Right? Like that's where I would aim most of my investor questions if I was hearing that volume drop on that specific area. That's vocal. Nonverbal. So nonverbal, what you're looking for is incongruencies, where the verbal does not match the body. The biggest and most obvious one is when someone says yes, but shakes their head no, or says no, but shakes their head yes. So I might say to my daughter, "Did you clean your room?" Yeah, I did. She's shaking her head no. In Western cultures, so there's a cultural exception to this one, India, Bulgaria, and Pakistan. They nod a little bit differently. The research actually shows that. But in countries outside of India, Bulgaria, and Pakistan, when we agree with someone, say yes, or telling the truth, we typically agree with ourselves and shake our heads yes. When we don't agree or don't like something, we'll often shake our heads no. We can sometimes also do this in disbelief, like, wow, I cannot believe that just happened. So I'm always looking for incongruent nods. This happens a lot if you ask someone, do you like the new girl? Yeah, she's great. Right? You see that.
100%, yeah.
All the time. Yeah. And people, they don't realize they're doing it, but they're shaking their head no. They do not like that person. You'll also see this with mismatched facial expressions. And the biggest one for liars, the research finds, is disgust. So disgust is an expression that people make without even realizing it. And this is across cultures. When we don't like something or when we smell something bad, we crinkle our nose up and we flash the upper whites of our teeth and we go, ugh, that. So you'll notice that liars typically feel dirty when they lie. So oftentimes they'll show disgust with themselves for lying. So you'll ask someone, so what do you think of the proposal? Yeah, it's really good. And they might even sniff.
Really?
Yeah.
What's a sniff? What does it signal?
Oh, it's a disgust activator. Like when we are disgusted, our nasal cavities want to close because we want to take in less of it. And so even though it's not about food, it's about a preference. Liars will often show a little bit of disgust when they are lying because they are like a little bit disgusted with themselves. And so you'll see this activation here. By the way, no one does that naturally. Like, right, this is a very unnatural way to hold my face, but we do it when we feel disgusted. It's the nasal cavities. When we nasal dilate, our nasal wings dilate, that's what it's called. Like these nasal wings dilate and we begin to scrunch them up. It's like don't like what we're seeing, smelling, hearing. So what I will do is I will share a proposal to someone. I will talk about something and I watch for any disgust. So I'll say, here's the plan for 2025. Here's what we're going to do. And if I see I know that team member or that person is like not that into it. And that's when I double click. Any questions? How do you feel? Steven, do you like this idea?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, no. Horrible. You look like you're about to throw up, by the way.
I heard you say that the most toxic relationships are the ambivalent relationships.
Oh.
The word ambivalent means, what does it mean?
Okay, so ambivalent is actually not toxic. So toxic is like, we know it's bad, we don't want it, we're creating boundaries around it. Ambivalent means we're not sure. Ambivalent relationships are the relationships in your life that are the most damaging. They're the relationships where you wonder, does she like me? Do I like her? Ugh, I wish she would cancel this dinner we have. Am I tired after that? I'm dreading it. Do I have to go? Gosh, I wish I was home. Those are ambivalent relationships where you're not sure. And they are so energetically draining. Because a toxic person, they're toxic. You're like, I don't like that person. They're not serving me. I'm not going out to dinner. I'm going home. No thanks. Not going to text you. Not going to tell you I'm thinking about you. Where an ambivalent person, you're like, I should check in with that person. I really should go to this dinner. Oh, it's been 5 months since I've gone to dinner. Oh man, do I even know what they're up to these days? Do I even care? And then most importantly, do they like me? Do they support me? That's why I asked about that friend that you were like unsure about. I was like, are they jealous? Do they have a problem with you? Because you might be picking up on they are ambivalent towards you. And you're picking up on that. There's a research study that was done with police officers, and they wanted to know what makes for a thriving workplace. So they asked police officers to rank the people in their precinct. And they found that the police officers who had the most ambivalent ties were more unhappy in their job, had less work-life balance, had more workplace stress, more than the people who had toxic relationships. In other words, the police officers who said all 10 of those people are toxic were happier at work than the police officers who said, I don't know if I like that person and that person. I don't know if that person likes me. I don't know if I want to go out to lunch with that person again. I kind of would rather be alone because it is so mentally draining to have ambivalent relationships. So it's really important if you're making that list of people, going back to the very beginning, the people you're really close, not very close with, kind of close with, really close with. If you're not sure, put them at the bottom. And in the next 30 days, try to ask them the questions that we shared. Working on anything exciting? What's your biggest goal right now? And see if you like their answers. It's important to either move them up or move them out. Don't let them be ambivalent.
One of the things that is highly searched on Google, I was looking at Google to figure out what the most searched questions are. There's some tools that I use to figure out what people want to know. And one of them was just, funnily, how do I start a conversation?
That's what my next book is about, so I'm happy to hear that. Okay, one is don't overthink your opener. Starting a conversation is like, hey, I'm Vanessa. Like literally your opener can just be that. My youngest sister, she was like, the best advice I ever gave her, ever. And I was like, what is it? She was like, you just told me to say hello to people. And that is it. Your opener is just, hey, I'm Vanessa. Hey, nice to meet you. So don't overthink the opener because that opener, your body is actually doing a lot of things. Your brain and body are like competence, warmth, facial expressions, voice tone. If you're like, what's your biggest goal in life? It's way too much. And so one is your opener should actually be basic. So the other person's brain is like, gives them a chance to like, safe. Okay, friend, we're friend. Hey, how are you doing? Right? I did my friend cue. I held up my hand. So don't overthink your opener. Hey, nice to meet you. Hey, I'm Vanessa. Your first question is where things get more interesting. Okay, so if you don't know their name, you want to say like, oh, what's your name? Great, I'm Vanessa. Then you have a choice. And I like to take the better route. You can say, so what do you do? But I really don't like that path. It's autopilot. So what I like to do instead is ask a version of the excitement question. Do anything fun and exciting this past weekend? If it's a Monday. So Mondays, I always ask, you do anything fun this past weekend? Fridays, I always ask, have any exciting plans coming up this weekend? And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I don't talk to anyone. No.
What is the most important thing we haven't talked about that we should have talked about? For the person sat at home, the typical question, the most prolific question that you get.
There's one story that I love that I try to keep front of mind, which is about Harry S. Truman, former US president. Most people don't know about him is that he was actually severely introverted. And when most people think about US presidents, they do not think about introverts. In fact, most presidents have to be kind of a booming extrovert personality, and he was very introverted. And he did something very interesting at the Democratic National Convention back in, I believe, 1944. He knew he was not a good public speaker, which also is very rare for a US president to become president without being a good public speaker. He knew he could not cut it on stage with the very charismatic people, and he was behind. In the polls, he was not the preferred candidate. So he was like, I'm not going to compete on stage. I'm not going to try to outspeak them. I'm not going to try to go work the floor and shake hands. It's not my way. What I am going to do is try to find a way to do what I'm best at, which is one-on-one conversations where I can win people over with an argument. So in the Democratic National Convention, it was really hot. It was in Chicago in the middle of summer. He rented the one air-conditioned room in the bottom, in the basement of the convention center. And one by one, his team would invite person by person down into that air-conditioned room, and he would tell them his story. He would tell them his points, and vote by vote. And as the votes were being tallied, he would win over every single person that went to that room. One, it was air-conditioned, so they wanted to stay there as long as possible. Two, he would hear, what are your concerns? Why do you not want to vote for me? And then he would explain to them why they should vote for him. And vote by vote, he ended up winning the national convention without having to speak on stage barely at all. I share this because stop competing on stages where you can't be your best. Start creating rooms where you can. Think about, what are your social strengths? You have one. What is it? Is it storytelling? Is it being funny? Is it listening? Is it being empathetic? Is it being a decoder? Is it being persuasive? What is your social strength? Create spaces and rooms where you can exercise that strength, because no one wants you to pretend to be an extrovert or pretend to be something that you're good at that you're not. It's much better to do what you're actually good at and attract the right people.
And your social strength might not be in person.
Might not be. And that's okay. Like, there are some people who are great at texting. There are some people who are great at sending voice notes. There are some people who make their friends by broadcasting and then picking out a couple people. That's how you met your girlfriend. Is you broadcasted, she resonated with something that you said, and you gave her the way to find you. She did, and then you met. So maybe it's broadcasting. I think we have to think outside the box. It's not only in person. There's so many ways that you can have social strengths.
I've heard it all now.
Yeah.
I get it. I believe it. I'm into it.
Yes.
What is step one? I'm going to buy your books.
Oh,
There's two of them here.
nice.
So I'm going to buy both of these books. Both of them will be linked below. What else can I do to start on my journey of becoming, you were a recovering awkward person. You were awkward before, now you're not.
Yes.
What's step one?
Okay, step number one is begin to break autopilot. So
Okay.
make a commitment for the next 30 days. You are not going to trigger autopilot in your conversation. No more what do you do, no more how are you, no more where are you from, no more,
Okay.
right? Ask better questions.
Okay.
What's your biggest goal? Working on anything exciting. You're disgusting me.
No, I was going to tell you look
good.
good.
Okay, so that's challenge number one. Challenge number two, find out where you fall on the warmth and competence scale. Are you highly warm? Do you need to dial up competence to be taken more seriously? Are you highly competent? You need to dial up warm to be seen as more likable and friendly and trustworthy. Do that email audit. So take the quiz, then do the email audit, and then if you can, here's the bonus challenge. Send the charisma quiz to someone who knows you well, someone at work, maybe a partner. Ask them to take it as you and screenshot their results. Sometimes how we perceive our warmth and competence is not how others perceive our warmth and competence. So if you take it and you say, I'm perfect, I'm a 5 of 5, but they take it and they see you as really high on the warmth scale, that is going to be critical feedback for you.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're going to be leaving it for. And the question that's been left for you.
I always love these.
When in your life did you try to outrun your pain? And what was the consequence? When in your life did you turn and face your pain? And what was the consequence?
There was a really weird moment in my career where everything was taking off. I had a lot of years of a lot of hard struggle, and being a writer, I had a published book, traditionally published book that completely failed. 2011, we won't name it. Put it out there, thought my world would change, and it did terribly. I got terrible reviews, it didn't sell, and I was literally told you'll never write a book again. And I was just devastated. And my husband was like, you gotta keep writing. You're a writer. You gotta keep writing. And so I went back to it. I started Science People. That was officially when I started like the actual website, Science People. Kept writing. And then it started taking off. I had videos that went viral. We started having millions of visitors on the website. And I wanted to prove myself very badly. And I wanted to erase that painful memory. And so when I got approached to write Captivate, I was like, no, I can't write books. I'm a YouTuber and a blogger, but I can't write books. And she was like, this will be a different kind of book. This will be a book about really what you want to say to people, not the book you think you should write. And I was like, no. I was like, I cannot do it. It's too painful. I will not survive if that fails. I will not survive if that fails. And it took Nikki months of telling me, this will be different. This will be a different kind of book. You can write the real book that you really want to write. And so I said yes. I started writing it. And that was when I think I don't know how the end of the question was, but decided it would be worth the pain. If that failed, it would be worth the pain of at least saying that I tried. That was a very hard choice. Thank goodness it did not fail. It did really well. And I'm eternally grateful for that. When anyone buys a copy, I'm like one click further from that failure. Horrible failure.
Vanessa, thank you. Thank you so much. What you write about and what you educate people on is a subject that's probably more important now than ever. And I say that because of the sort of macro climate of society where we're more lonely than ever. We're struggling with connection. It's not coming naturally to us as it once probably did, or at least more natural than it does now. And so many it's crazy. I've only been a podcaster really, I think, for about 4 years. Like I think I started in 2017, but really it's been 4 years since I've been uploading. And it's crazy just in that time alone, how many more of the questions I'm getting are about all the things you write about. They're about like how to make a friend and how to show up in a certain way and all these kinds of things. So what the work you're doing is so unbelievably important. There's so much more that needs to be done as well. But the contribution you've had to the 400,000 people that you've taught and the millions of people that have bought these books and consumed your videos and everything is a really, really important one.
Thanks.
So thank you. It's so funny because even me, like people see me on camera and stuff, but I learned so much from your work. So much.
Thank you.
So much. So many things as well that I think a lot about, and things you can take or leave. You've got to say like, who do I want to be and like, who am I? Truly to then apply these things because there's no point, like I just have no interest in building a facade or anything, but there's things about me where I go, fucking hell, I didn't even know I was doing that,
Yeah. And like, what kind of friend do I want to be? What kind of partner do I want to be? What kind of way do I want to be in conversation? Like you get to choose.